Hello everyone, welcome back to Works 360. Today I'm going to be going through the steps I used to build my base for my diorama for my Normandy resupply. You could say it was an experience. I made a couple of mistakes along the way, but overall it's been fun. Let's jump into it. I'm going to show you how I use Woodland Scenics Super Strength Plaster to cover and shape the base. This stuff is tough, easy to work with, and it gives me a solid foundation for everything that comes later, like the Sherman, the mortar team, and all the resupply gear. Here's my base so far. It's about 16 by 24 inches, and I've already glued down some of the foam for the contouring I'm doing. Some of the tools and materials I used was a plaster mixing set by Woodland Scenics, comes with a couple bowls and a spatula, some paint brushes, the aluminum foil ball, which I didn't actually get to use, some gloves, water, the plaster, and I'm going to mix a little bit of the sand and paint in. This next step is optional, but if you want to save yourself some work later, then you can add a couple of drops of Burnt Umber acrylic paint into the water first. Once you get that mixed up, we'll mix up the plaster. The ratio I try and use is about 2 parts plaster powder and 1 part water. So for the first batch, I'll do 2 cups of plaster and 1 cup of water. I also experiment a little bit by putting some sand in there to see how it turns out. Once you get it to the consistency you're looking for, it's time to scoop it out onto the base. I like to try and keep it around 1/8 to 1/4 inch thick. That's thick enough to hide the foam, but not so heavy that it cracks. Just use a plate knife, old brush, or a spatula to work it in place. Now, because I was doing such a large section, it was hard for me to get the consistency exactly the way I was looking for. For my first diorama, maybe I should have started a little bit smaller, but it was a good learning experience. Because this is a large terrain, I had to go back a few times and mix up a couple different batches and try and smooth it out, but also texture it as it dried, so that it would get kind of a natural land formation, but I didn't want it to look weird. It was a learning experience. Here I'm trying to form how I want the land to lay. I'm putting in where I want my little road to go, and also trying to smooth out where the tanks and loading area is going to be. With the last batch that I put down, it ended up drying too quickly, but this is the time you want to start pushing in tracks, footprints, and scatter some grit around for sand. For smoother areas, dip a brush in water and run it over the surface. That helps create a natural dirt path for vehicle rides. So here's the finished base, fully covered in plaster. I'll let this dry for at least 24 hours before I start painting and layering on mud, turf, and ground cover. You can already see the groundwork starting to take shape. base coat of Burnt Umber. So I started off painting a little bit too thick, so then I had to start thinning the paint out, and I also realized that I had a little bit too small of a paintbrush, so it took me a little while to get this base coat on. Note for next time, I think I'm just gonna buy some spray paint or primer that's brown and just spray it all at once, so I'm not taking so much time putting on so many different layers, trying to get in all the different cracks and crevices. Once I started getting close to done finally painting the Burnt Umber, I realized it looks kind of like lava. It's more red than what I was looking for, so I decided to go with a regular brown to kind of darken it up a little bit. Alright, so I started with Burnt Umber, base coat to lock everything in, then I started to layer in the browns to start building depth, giving variation across the terrain, and to darken the soil up a little bit. This gives me a solid foundation to work from when I start adding mud effects, turf, and all the other little details that will tie the diorama together. In part 2, I'll start layering those textures and really bring the scene to life. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment with your favorite technique for painting groundwork or just building the base in general. I'll catch you in the next one.